There's a very specific moment that happens inside a bank, and the teller stops calling you sir because the script tells them to, and starts calling you by your name because they, actually want to. And nothing about you changed. Same face, same haircut, same coffee-stained shirt, same disaster of a parking job out in the lot. The only thing that moved is a number on a screen, a number they can see and you can feel. And here's the thing nobody tells you about getting wealthy. The money part is, honestly, kind of dull. The wild part, the part that messes with your head, is watching the entire world quietly rearrange itself around you as you cross a few invisible lines. Relatives who ghosted you for a decade suddenly remember you exist. Banks that wouldn't return your call now hand you a personal human being. And total strangers decide you must be brilliant, purely because you look like money. So this isn't a how to get rich video. It's about the 3 net worth levels where people, institutions, and even your own family start treating you like a completely different person, plus a 4th thing nobody warns you about. The reason not one of these levels ever feels like enough, and the lines are way closer than you think. I'm Finn, and I spend a genuinely unreasonable amount of my life thinking about money and why people act so strange around it. If you've ever felt like the world's running on a rulebook nobody handed you, hit subscribe and smash that like button. Because today we're drawing the exact map of where those rules flip, and which level is secretly a trap. Quick note before we start. I'm not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice. These are just patterns I've watched repeat over and over. And the first one messes with people the hardest. So let me show you where you actually stand right now, because I promise it isn't where you think. Start with a number that should genuinely annoy you. The median net worth of an American household sits around $192,900. That's the middle of the pack. Half of all families have less than that. But the average, roughly $1,063,700. Read those two again. The average is more than 5 times the median. How is that even possible? Because a tiny cluster of people at the very top are so outrageously rich that they drag the whole average up like a toddler swinging off a curtain rod. So every time you hear that the average American is basically a millionaire, your brain quietly files you under failure. Ugh. When the truth is way simpler. The average is a fairy tale, the median is the real story, and most people are nowhere near a million. Most people, are one blown transmission away from a genuinely terrible month. That's the map. Now let's climb it. The first line you cross sits at a number that's going to sound almost insulting once you see what it actually does. $100,000. I know 100 grand isn't a yacht, and in some cities it's barely a down payment. But there's a reason Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, one of the sharpest financial minds who ever lived, said this, and I'm quoting him directly. The first 100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't bought with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little. Why would a billionaire fixate on a number that, to him, was basically a rounding error? Because of what happens the moment after you hit it. Let me show you the math, because it genuinely rewires how people see their whole financial life. Money doubles on a schedule, and that schedule depends only on your rate of return, not on how much you already have. There's a shortcut for it called the rule of 72. You take 72 divided by your annual return and that's roughly how many years your money needs to double. At a 7% return, which is a pretty standard long-term market assumption after inflation, your money doubles about every 10 years. Simple enough. Now, here's where it gets good. And by good, I mean slightly cruel. That 10-year doubling time is identical whether you've got $100 or 100 million. Not even close. 100,000 at 7% earns you about $7,000 in a year. Fine. A decent used car. $1 million at that same 7% earns about $70,000 a year, more than the median American makes at a full-time job for doing absolutely nothing. And $5 million earns roughly $350,000 a year, while you sleep, while you're on vacation, while you're, losing an argument in a comment section. You see it? The percentage is the same, the effort is the same, boulder, same hill. The only thing that changed is the size of the snowball. That's exactly why the first 100 grand feels like shoving a stalled car uphill in the rain, and the second million feels like the universe is just mailing you checks. The early grind isn't slow because you're doing it wrong. It's slow because the snowball is still tiny. Munger wasn't being dramatic, he was being precise. So what does crossing this line actually do to how the world treats you? At this level? Almost nothing. And that's the entire point. 100,000 in real savings quietly drops you out of a club most Americans can't leave. Depending on how you count it, somewhere between a quarter and well over half of US households are living paycheck to paycheck. And get this, even among people earning over 100,000 a year, around 44% say they've got little or nothing left once the monthly bills clear. So crossing into actual liquid breathing room money statistically yanks you out of the most financially fragile group in the country. The institutions notice too. Just barely. This is the level where a bank like Bank of America starts quietly changing your pricing once you hold 100,000 with them. Better card rewards, a discount on your auto loan, a little knocked off your mortgage. No red carpet yet. They've just, unlocked a slightly nicer waiting room. But it's the first time the machine looks at your number and decides you're worth being a little kinder to. So who's actually treating you differently at level 1? Honestly, mostly math and you. Nobody throws a party at 100 grand. The only thing that truly changed is that compounding has officially flipped from working against you to working for you. One honesty check, by the way. Munger said that line back in the 90s, and 100 grand then is closer to 200,000 today. So if you want his finish line in modern money, aim for 200,000. But the principle is bulletproof. Get the snowball rolling, because the next line is where other people finally enter the chat. Think back to the first time a bank actually treated you like you mattered, or more likely, the first time one very pointedly didn't. The loan officer who barely looked up before handing you a no that everyone in the room could feel. Now picture the exact opposite of that, being your everyday normal, because the second line, $1 million, is where that opposite becomes the default. But first, the complicated truth about $1 million. Because it is not the number your grandparents think it is. Using the 4% rule, that's the idea from planner Bill Benjamin, that you can safely pull about 4% of your portfolio a year and have it last roughly $30 million throws off about $40,000 a year, basically forever. And $40,000 a year for doing nothing is genuinely wonderful. But notice what it is and what it isn't. It's comfortable. It is not a private jet. A millionaire today never has to panic over a car repair again. They are not, however, lighting cigars with $100 bills. Here's the reframe every single person chasing that number needs tattooed somewhere visible. $1 million in 1990 has the buying power of about $2.5 million today. So when your parents talk about millionaires like they were gods walking the earth, they're not crazy. In their dollars, a millionaire really was rich. The word got famous in an era when it meant something that now takes $2.5 million to match. The bar moved, the word didn't. Even UBS, the giant Swiss bank that counts these people for a living, and, there are now about 23.8 million millionaires in the US, with over 1,000 brand new ones minted every single day. UBS basically came out and admitted the $1 million threshold is, and I'm quoting them here, a bit of outdated. When the bankers themselves are telling you $1 million isn't what it used to be, believe them. But socially and institutionally, this is where the treatment changes for real. And the fascinating part is that almost none of it is visible from the outside. Around this tier, banks stop treating you like an account number and start assigning you an actual human being. At Chase, once you got about 150,000 with them, you become a private client, a dedicated advisor. Fees waived away like they were never real, no fee wires, ATM charges refunded anywhere on earth, invitations to events you didn't even know existed. Congratulations, you've been upgraded from account number to person. We'd be genuinely sad to lose. There's a difference, and it's worth a few grand a year, in fees you will never see again. But here's the part that genuinely rewired how I understand wealth. The rich don't get rich and then spend their money. They get rich and then borrow against their money, so they never have to sell it. It's a tool called a securities-backed line of credit. So say you own a big pile of stocks. Instead of selling them, which triggers taxes and stops your compounding cold, you go to the bank and say, lend me money against these. And the bank says, absolutely, here's a low rate and we won't even check your credit because the portfolio is the collateral. It's like spending your savings without spending your savings. Financial Schrodinger's cat, except the cat is always alive and the cat is rich. We're talking interest rates of a few percent. While you and I sit here staring down 12 to 16% on a credit card, JP Morgan literally uses this exact example in its own marketing. Say you've got a $10 million portfolio and you need $3 million in cash. Now, if you sell $3 million in stock, the $7 million you've got left grows into about $483,000 of gains in a year. But if you borrow the $3 million instead and leave all $10 million invested, that full amount grows into about $690,000. And even after paying $58,000 in interest, you still come out roughly $148,000 ahead. That's 31% more money for the simple crime of being wealthy enough to borrow instead of sell. This right here, this is the entire game at the top. Buy assets, borrow against them, never sell, repeat. The system has a VIP lane, and the toll to enter it is having so much money you don't actually need the lane. Quick gut check before we climb higher. Pause for 1 second and actually picture your own number. Everything you own minus everything you owe. Got it? Hold on to it, because where you land changes everything about the next level, and most people guess way, way too high. The strange truth of level 2 is that the shift is almost entirely invisible. A typical millionaire is mostly home equity and a 401k invisible at the grocery store. The cashier does not care. The different treatment all happens behind closed doors, at loan desks, in advisor offices, in rooms most people never walk into. The world doesn't treat you like royalty at $1 million, it just quietly stops charging you the poor person tax. And if that sounds anticlimactic, hold on. Because the third level is where this gets genuinely psychologically weird. Forget the number for a second, because you already know the feeling this level is about. You fantasized about it. It's that moment your boss says something completely unreasonable, and instead of swallowing it, you get to lean back and think, I don't actually need this job. That's it. That's the whole thing. The third line, somewhere between $5 and $10 million, has an unofficial, slightly profane nickname I'll politely call freedom money. And the power of it isn't the quitting. It's that everyone around you can sense that you could. Run the math, and you'll see exactly why this is the line. $5 million at that same 4% generates about $200,000 a year without you lifting a finger. For most households, that isn't retire someday. That's work is optional. Today, permanently. And the thing nobody warns you about is how that changes the way people treat you while you stay. You negotiate from total calm. You can't be pressured. You can't be leveraged. You can't be scared with the threat of a layoff. And weirdly, that earns you more respect, not less. Nothing turns a room towards you like the quiet confidence of someone who genuinely needs nothing from it. This is also where the financial system rolls out the actual red carpet. The velvet rope, invitation-only stuff. The real JP Morgan private bank wants a minimum of $10 million in investable assets. Goldman Sachs's private wealth arm sits right around the same, with a median client account near $55 million. And if you really want to feel small, there are firms with an ultra tier, built for families worth $200 million and up. Somewhere out there is an entire team of brilliant professionals whose only job is managing money for people richer than your whole town. You will never meet them. They are not for you. I just think you should know the room exists. Only about 1.6% of American households even crack 10 million. So if you get here, you are statistically a rounding error in the best possible way. But now I have to tell you about the dark side of level 3. Because this is the part the gurus posing next to rented Lamborghinis will never mention. At this level, people start treating you differently. And you know, not all of it is good. There's an actual clinical term for what happens to people who come into serious money fast. It's called sudden wealth syndrome. Guilt, paranoia, isolation, a strange kind of decision paralysis. And one of its best documented symptoms is that the second word gets out, people materialize. Old friends who suddenly remember your birthday. A cousin you last saw at a funeral in 2014 who now has a can't-miss opportunity in vending machines, salespeople, advisors, charities, all flooding in the instant they catch the scent. The phrase people use is that the relatives come out of the woodwork. And anyone who's lived even a tiny version of it knows exactly how that feels. We've actually got a natural experiment for this, and it's lottery winners. So a study of thousands of Florida winners found that a windfall of 50 to 150 grand didn't save people from bankruptcy. It just delayed it. They went broke within a few years at the same rate, sometimes a higher one, as people who won almost nothing. The money didn't fix the math of their lives. It just bought a longer runway before the exact same crash. And you've heard the same cautionary tales about pro athletes. Now, those exact numbers are honestly disputed, so I won't pretend they're gospel, but the underlying pattern is rock solid. A huge pile of money, dropped onto a life that wasn't built to hold it, tends to leak right out the bottom. And then there's the part that has nothing to do with money at all: resentment. Psychologists sometimes call it crab bucket mentality. You put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and any crab that tries to climb out gets dragged right back down by the others. Not out of malice, exactly. More like, instinct. And people do this too. The moment you visibly start winning, some of the folks closest to you will often, without even realizing it, try to pull you back to where they are. Because your rise quietly indicts their standing still. It shows up everywhere, across cultures. The Japanese have a saying: the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So you end up in this lonely paradox. The same wealth that earns you respect from strangers can cost you ease with the people who knew you before. Financial freedom sometimes shows up holding hands with the loss of your freedom to fully trust anyone. Which brings me to that fourth thing I promised you. The reason none of these levels ever feels like enough. You'd think that somewhere up this ladder there's a step marked enough, where you finally get to exhale. There isn't. Because the bar runs with you. Charles Schwab surveys Americans every single year on what net worth actually makes a person wealthy, and the number just keeps climbing. Recently, it landed around 2.5 million. The person with 1 million looks up at the person with 2.5 and feels poor. The one with 2.5 looks at the 10 and feels poor. The goalposts don't just move, they sprint away from you at the exact speed you approach them. Your brain adjusts to every new level in about a month and then quietly demands the next one. That's the trap sitting underneath all 3 levels, the one almost nobody escapes by accident. So let me hand you something better than a number to chase. The point of seeing these levels clearly isn't to make you feel behind. It's the exact opposite. It's to let you watch the machine actually work, charging the rich less and the rest of us more, so that you can stop measuring your entire worth against lines that were never built to make you feel like you'd arrived. The first 100 grand is the realest, the hardest, and very nearly the only one fully within your control. So obsess over that one. Everything after it is mostly just the system, being the system, and now you get to watch it happen. Instead of feeling vaguely cheated by it, here's the truth I'd want a friend to tell me. The people who actually win this game aren't the ones who climb the fastest. They're the ones who decide on purpose what enough means for them before the moving goalposts get to decide it for them. You can cross every single one of these lines and still be miserable. And you could also sit comfortably between them and build a life that the strangers, the bankers, and the crabs in the bucket can't touch. So pick your number. Make it yours. And this is the genuinely radical part. Actually stop when you reach it. And that teller from the very beginning, the one who finally learns your name, here's the secret nobody says out loud. They were never really reacting to you. They were reacting to the number on the screen. And the entire trick to this whole thing is making sure you never make that same mistake about yourself. If this gave you a new way to see where you stand, do me a favor and subscribe. Because the next thing we're breaking down is the financial trap that hits the moment your net worth starts to grow. The one that quietly eats the gains you work so hard for. I'll see you in that one.